2021, the van, the dream, the silence. The summer of 2021 shimmered with promise for Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie. Their white Ford Transit van, painstakingly converted into a tiny home on wheels, was more than just a vehicle. It was a vessel for adventure, a rolling backdrop for the van life dream they curated online. Images splashed across Instagram, Gabby beaming under vast desert skies, the couple embracing near dramatic canyons. Captions filled with hashtags of freedom and exploration. They set out from New York in June, chasing sunsets westward, planning months of nomadic bliss documented for their growing social media audience. But behind the filtered photos and aspirational posts, a different reality was unfolding. In Moab, Utah, on August 12th, the curated image cracked. Flashing police lights illuminated a distressed Gabby, tears streaming down her face as she spoke to officers, Brian standing nearby. Bodycam footage captured a raw, emotional argument, a glimpse beneath the surface, though police classified it as a mental health break and separated them for the night. The incident was a stark tremor before the earthquake. The posts continued for a while, but the rhythm felt different. Gabby's last confirmed sighting was in late August at a Wyoming restaurant, reportedly witnessing a tense exchange involving Brian. Her final Instagram post was dated August 25th. Then the vibrant online presence fell silent. Her mother, Nicole Schmidt, back in New York, felt a growing unease. Texts arrived purportedly from Gabby, but the language felt wrong, impersonal. The usual FaceTime calls stopped, worry gnawed, escalating into panic. On September 1st, the white van reappeared, pulling into the driveway of the Laundrie family. Home in Northport, Florida, but only Brian stepped out. Gabby was gone. 10 days later, unable to bear the silence any longer, Gabby's family officially reported her missing. The news broke, and a bright, smiling face of Gabby Petito flooded screens across the nation. Where was she? Why had Brian returned alone? Why wouldn't he speak to police, who swiftly named him a person of interest? The questions hung heavy in the humid Florida air and echoed across the vast landscapes Gabby had so recently traversed. Just as the public's focus intensified on Brian, he vanished. His parents reported him missing on September 17th, claiming he'd gone hiking days earlier in the sprawling, alligator-infested Carlton Reserve. A frantic, waterlogged search began in the treacherous Florida swamp, while simultaneously investigators combed the remote Wyoming wilderness where Gabby was last known to be. The heartbreaking answer came on September 19th in the Spread Creek dispersed camping area of Bridger-Teton National Forest. Near where fellow travelers had spotted the couple's van, searchers found human remains. Days later, forensic analysis confirmed the devastating truth. It was Gabby. The Teton County coroner would later deliver the brutal findings. She had been murdered, manually strangled, weeks before her discovery. The search for Brian Laundrie intensified, now fueled by a federal arrest warrant for unauthorized use of Gabby's debit card after her death. The nation watched, captivated and horrified, as law enforcement battled the unforgiving Florida terrain. Weeks passed. Then, on October 20th, as floodwaters receded in an area previously searched, Brian's backpack, some personal items, and skeletal remains were found in the Myakkahatchee Creek Environmental Park, adjacent to the reserve. Dental records confirmed it was Brian Laundrie. Beside his remains lay a notebook. The final grim pieces fell into place. The autopsy ruled Brian's death a suicide by a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and the notebook, salvaged from the elements, contained his own words, written statements. As the FBI later revealed, claiming responsibility for Gabby Petito's death, the cross-country dream had ended in an unimaginable nightmare. The vibrant young woman who sought adventure and connection had her life violently stolen. The man who shared her journey and documented their supposed bliss was her killer, ultimately ending his own life in a desolate swamp. The case officially closed, but the tragedy left indelible scars on a grieving family determined to honor Gabby's memory by helping others, and on a public forced to confront the dark realities that can hide behind even the sunniest of curated lives. The silence left by Gabby's vibrant presence continues to echo. Story 2. The air in Jupiter, Florida, felt heavy in March 2020. A new virus was spreading across the globe, casting a shadow of uncertainty. Against this strange backdrop, a personal darkness was gathering around 51-year-old Gretchen Stone. Anthony. She was separated from her husband, David Anthony, and starting fresh in her Jupiter home as divorce proceedings began. Friends knew the relationship had been strained. On the morning of March 21st, a neighbor's peace was shattered. A chilling scream tore through the air from the direction of Gretchen's patio. Sounds of pain and struggle followed. Then an unnerving quiet settled. A few days passed. Gretchen's friends and family started getting text messages sent from her phone. The messages stated Gretchen had a bad case of a new virus. She was supposedly in Jupiter Medical Center. A later text claimed she'd been moved by the CDC to a special secret place because she was so sick. The center wrote that Gretchen could not receive calls. Doubt crept in. The tone of the messages felt wrong, not like Gretchen at all. Friends checked with the hospital. Gretchen had never been a patient there. The story about a secret CDC center seemed unbelievable, a strange tale spun from the current health scare. Concern turned into alarm. Gretchen was officially reported missing on March 26th. Police entered Gretchen's house. Beneath the surface, signs pointed to trouble. The faint chemical odor of bleach lingered in the garage, suggesting a cleanup. Attempt. Investigators noticed small, possible blood stains. A picture frame lay broken near the door, glass scattered. Gretchen's purse was gone. Her phone was missing too. Attention turned swiftly to David Anthony, the estranged husband. Security camera footage from a neighbor who heard the scream showed David's unique dark blue truck near Gretchen's home around the time the cries were heard. Another person reported seeing David leaving Gretchen's place that same day. Technology started piecing together a grim picture. Gretchen's phone, the one sending messages about her being sick in a hospital, was actually moving. Its location signals matched David Anthony's path, first around Jupiter, then traveling north. David's own phone signal put him near Gretchen's house when a neighbor heard the terrible sounds. David's actions became increasingly suspect. Security cameras filmed him inside a pawn shop days after Gretchen disappeared. He was trying to sell jewelry belonging to women, pieces identified as Gretchen's, including a special ring. Sensing discovery was near, David fled Florida. He drove Gretchen's car and his own truck westward, crossing states, finally stopping in Las Cruces, New Mexico, but the trail of evidence stretched behind him. His run from the truth ended there with his arrest on March 31st, brought back to Florida. David Anthony faced charges, second-degree murder and kidnapping. Prosecutors believed they had a strong case built on the neighbor's account, the odd texts, the cleaned-up scene, the phone data, the pawn shop visit, and David's flight. Even without having found Gretchen, it seemed David had silenced Gretchen and used the pandemic confusion as a smokescreen. Months went by. The prosecution and Gretchen's heartbroken family faced a hard choice. David Anthony offered to plead guilty to the charges. His condition: he would reveal where he had hidden Gretchen's body. The family's deep need to bring Gretchen home weighed against the chance for a different outcome at a trial. The decision was made. In December 2020, David provided the information. He directed investigators to a secluded, overgrown spot just a few miles from the home Gretchen had lived in. Searchers went to the location off Bush Road. They found Gretchen. Anthony's remains. January 2021 saw David Anthony receive his sentence, 38 years in prison. The breakdown of his marriage, the fight over the divorce, these appeared to be the roots of his final violent act. Gretchen Anthony's story is a sad account of hidden troubles ending in loss. It shows how one man tried to use a worldwide health crisis to cover up a terrible deed. It also shows how determined investigators, using witness information and modern tools, pieced together the truth, and how a family's love pushed for answers, seeking peace for Gretchen at last. Story 3. A Missing Smile, a Dark River. The story of Audry G. Cunningham, February 2024, brought a chill to Polk County, Texas, near the wide expanse of Lake Livingston. 11-year-old Audry G. Cunningham lived there, a young girl just starting out. She shared her home space with her father, grandparents, and a family friend named Steven McDougall, who stayed in a camper on their property. The morning of Thursday, February 15th, seemed ordinary. McDougall, who sometimes took Audrey G to her school bus stop, left the house with her. But Audrey G never got on the bus. She never reached her school. When the school day ended and she failed to come home, deep worry gripped her family. That evening they reported her missing. Audrey G. Cunningham had vanished. An Amber Alert spread her picture across the state. Police, state agencies, FBI, and concerned residents began searching. They walked through woods and along the shores of Lake Livingston, looking for any trace of the girl. The next day, searchers found a small, red Hello Kitty backpack near the large Lake Livingston Dam. It was Audrey G's. The discovery sent a cold feeling through everyone involved. Attention turned to Don McDougall. He was the last known person to see Audrey G. His account of the morning seemed off, the details changing. Investigators learned he had a past conviction, related to a child in another county years ago. As the hunt for Audrey G. grew more desperate, police arrested McDougall on an old, separate assault charge. This kept him nearby as investigators tried to piece together what happened to Audrey G. His dark blue SUV became an item of interest. The search lasted 5 tense days. Then, on Tuesday, February 20th, the worst news arrived. Search teams found Audrey G's body in the Trinity River, miles down from where her backpack was discovered. Officials shared grim information. She was tied to a heavy rock hidden below the water. The rope looked like rope seen in McDougall's truck just days earlier. A medical examination showed she died from violence, including a blow to her head. The news brought immense sadness and anger to Livingston and far beyond. With Audrey G found dead, the case against Don McDougall became clear. He was charged with capital murder, the most serious charge possible for killing a child under 15 in Texas. The local prosecutor stated plans to seek the death penalty. Investigators pointed to phone records, video showing McDougall near important places, his own statements, and the awful physical proof found with Audrey G as evidence linking him to her death. People gathered for vigils, lighting candles for the 11-year-old girl whose life was cut short. The community grieved, struggling with the loss and asking hard questions about safety and second chances. Audrey G. Cunningham's story became a sorrowful account of lost innocence, youth violence, and a community forever marked by a Mother's Day that turned terribly dark. Story 4. The story of Tristan Bailey in the quiet suburban streets of St. Johns County, Florida. Mother's Day weekend 2021 began with the promise of family gatherings. Sunlight filtered through the trees of the Durbin Crossing neighborhood, a place where children rode bikes and families felt secure. Among them lived 13-year-old Tristan Bailey, a girl known for her bright spirit and great energy, her days filled with school and the lively routines of competitive cheerleading. But as Sunday morning arrived, a cold dread started to fill the Bailey home. Tristan wasn't in her room. She hadn't been seen since the very early hours. Panic grew with each passing moment. Her family reported her missing, and soon the community came together quickly. Neighbors fanned out, searching woods and waterways, their hopeful calls mixing with the growing fear that spread through the neighborhood. The search showed unity, a shared refusal to accept the terrible possibility. Late that afternoon, the search ended in heartbreak. A resident walking near a water basin at the end of a quiet street made a devastating discovery in a wooded area. Late Tristan Bailey, the hope that had kept the searchers going, vanished, replaced by deep shock and grief. Investigators arrived at the scene, and the focus quickly centered on Aiden Fucci, a 14-year-old classmate who lived nearby. Security cameras gave a chilling timeline. Footage showed Tristan and Aiden walking together after a.m. on Sunday, going into the darkness near where her body was found. Later footage showed Aiden walking away alone, carrying his shoes, hours before the sun came up. The evidence piled up fast. Aiden's first explanations changed, not matching the known facts. A search of his house produced clothing stained with Tristan's DNA. Blood traces were found on his shoes and on a shirt hidden in his room. Near the water basin, investigators found a buck knife, thought to be the weapon used in the attack. It belonged to Aiden. The violence against Tristan was shocking. She had been stabbed 114 times, with marks of a desperate struggle on her arms and hands. Maybe the most upsetting piece was an image Iden posted from the back of a police car before he understood the seriousness of the situation. A selfie appeared on Snapchat showing him making a peace sign, with words asking if anyone had seen Tristan. It struck many as showing a complete lack of feeling, a scary look into a troubled mind. Information came out that Iden had spoken to friends before. The event mentioning dark thoughts about hurting someone, even describing an act like what happened to Tristan. Aiden Fucci was arrested, first facing a less serious charge. The terrible details from the medical examination and hints of planning led prosecutors to charge him as an adult with first-degree planned murder. The community was shaken, finding it hard to connect the age of the accused with the extreme violence of the crime. He first pleaded not guilty. But as the trial date got closer in early 2023, Aiden Fucci stood in court and changed his plea to guilty. The decision saved Tristan's family from the pain of hearing the graphic details presented in court. At the sentencing hearing, the courtroom felt heavy with sorrow. Tristan's family and friends shared their pain, describing a bright life ended much too soon. They spoke of her laughter, her love for cheer, the emptiness her absence left. The judge gave the sentence, life in prison. Florida law meant his case would be looked at again after 25 years, a rule for young offenders. But the sentence's length showed how serious the act was. No clear reason for the killing ever came out from Aiden. Ideas floated around, but the why behind the 114 wounds stayed hidden, lost in the unexplainable actions of a teenager. The St. Johns County community grieved deeply. Aqua, Tristan's favorite color, became a symbol of memory, showing up on ribbons tied to mailboxes, on car bumpers, and worn on shirts. The hashtag Bailey Strong stood for a group promised never to forget the bright-eyed cheerleader whose life finished so violently. The story of Tristan Bailey became a sad tale of innocence lost, youth violence, and a community forever marked by a Mother's Day that turned terribly dark.